Good topic.
Hello and welcome to The Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samueli. With me today, of course, is co-founder of The Gaggle, Peter Lavelle, host also of RT's talk show, Crosstalk. Well, in what must surely be the least surprising news of this year so far, and probably of 2021, the Facebook Oversight Board has decided to uphold Facebook's ban on former President Donald Trump. Um, it's not surprising. Nonetheless, the slimy, smarmy, self-satisfied, and deceitful reasoning of the Facebook Oversight Board should be examined and discussed in some detail. The Oversight Board was actually set up by Zuckerberg himself as a way of providing a certain rubber stamp for any kind of decisions that he takes, as if
Like
somehow,
the email.
yeah, sort of as if somehow, well, there's a higher body that he is answerable to. But of course, he's not answerable to anyone at all other than himself. So the board says that it upholds the decision to restrict Donald Trump. However, it declares it was not appropriate for Facebook to impose the indeterminate and standardless penalty of indefinite suspension. Facebook's normal penalties include removing the violating content, imposing a time-bound period of suspension, or permanently disabling a page and account. So this sounds very cool and reasonable, but of course, the question immediately arises. I mean, if this wasn't appropriate, then why the hell are you upholding the decision of Facebook? And then it goes on into some detail. There was a particular tweet that, well, it was a tweet, but he also issued a Facebook message which got him banned, in which Trump actually said that. Obviously, to the people who had attended the demonstration on January 6th, I know your pain, I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us, but you have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order. We have to respect our great people in law and order. Now, to an untrained eye, you think, okay, so isn't that surely Trump saying, go home? We don't want any violence. We don't want any disorder. However, both Twitter and Facebook took these notices down immediately, and on the pretext that somehow he was expressing some sympathy with the rioters. And of course, the Oversight Board agrees that this indeed should have been taken down. And then, as the reasoning continues, the board says, yes, these messages by Trump severely violated Facebook's community standards and Instagram's community guidelines. So when he says, we love you and you're very special, and he refers to the people who were in attendance as great patriots, and remember this day forever, he was in fact providing praise and support for people engaged in violence. Now, of course,
No evidence of that.
no evidence of that.
No evidence.
None. He was obviously referring to everybody who showed up on January the 6th. So nothing. There's no mention there that he was encouraging any violence. And he was talking, he's saying, we love you, we respect you, but you need to go home. And so that's it can't be more explicit than that. And it requires a very peculiar logic to see that as some sort of an encouragement of violence. But then Facebook, board does this routine of sounding very reasonable. That it wasn't appropriate for Facebook to impose an indefinite suspension. Not permissible for Facebook to keep a user off the platform for an undefined period. And in applying this penalty, Facebook did not follow a clear published procedure. So that sounds reasonable, unless, of course, what there is the real message there is, work out a proper procedure, and then throw him off the platform. And then you can say it's in accordance with our procedure. That's the dishonesty of it. So it sounds like, oh, well, you're doing a very reasonable. Well, this is, you're not following proper procedure because there's no mention there of just of kicking off somebody off the platform for views that you don't like. So it's basically Facebook asking Facebook, come up with a proper procedure. And so it says, within 6 months of this decision, Facebook must re-examine the arbitrary penalty it imposed on the president. And the penalty must be based on the gravity of the violation and the prospect of future harm. It must be consistent with Facebook's rules for severe violations.
Well, why don't they do it the other way around? Why don't they do it the other way around? Put them on and say, well, we'll come back and look at what's going on in 6 months' time and then make a decision. I don't understand why they couldn't
No,
do
I
that.
think exactly. I think
They
quite so. You're doing saying exactly the rational thing. But what is also interesting is that the board then issues a series of recommendations for Facebook. And it's, that this really bears worth reading, because what it's saying here, what Facebook should do, it says Facebook must rapidly escalate content containing political speech from highly influential users to specialized staff who are familiar with the linguistic and political context. Then it says it must dedicate adequate resourcing and expertise to assess risks of harm from influential accounts. It must produce more information to help users understand and evaluate the process and criteria for applying newsworthiness allowance. And then undertake a comprehensive review of Facebook's potential contribution. Listen to this. Undertake a comprehensive review of Facebook's potential contribution to the narrative of electoral fraud and the exacerbated tensions that culminated in the violence in the United States on January the 6th. You know what he's saying here? Basically, start kicking off a whole bunch of people from Facebook because they're presenting messages that you don't like. And then, even more creepily, it says there that Facebook must make clear its corporate human rights policy, how it collects, preserves, and where appropriate, shares information to assist in investigation and potential prosecution of grave violations of international criminal, human rights, and humanitarian law. So it's pretty much telling you, yeah, actively collaborate with prosecutors, investigators.
No, it's worse.
Yeah, go on.
It's worse. Now they're the police and the judicial system.
That's it.
That's what they are. Now they're fusing it all together.
That's it. Yeah. Now, I mean, this we really are moving into a Stasi culture in the United States, where big tech serves as a kind of ubiquitous snitch on everybody. Everyone checking and monitoring everybody's messages and then eagerly passing it up to the authorities. So the media, of course, are presenting it as if somehow Trump had appealed his ban. He never appealed his ban from Facebook. This was Zuckerberg who kind of appealed to the board that Zuckerberg had set up, in order that this board, Zuckerberg's creature, would provide a rubber stamp for what he did. And of course, that's what this board did. But it's once again an example of the sheer creepiness of this of big tech, and it's now complete control over our lives. Okay, Peter, what's your take?
Well, this whole incident is an insult to common sense. Okay, and if anyone believes that this board is independent of Zuckerberg, well, then I can sell you some condos on Mars. Okay, I mean, this is just utterly ridiculous here. Their findings with all their gobbledygook language, it says nothing. Okay, I mean, if a mistake has been made, rectify it now.
Right. That's yeah.
And the fundamental issue here, and again, this is something that is so creepy, is that the big tech is essentially rewriting our basic human rights. What right do they have to do that? We already have that on the law, on the books.
Yeah. All exactly.
Okay?
Human rights laws are on the books, exactly.
And the fundamental issue here, so a sitting president of the United States is denied the First Amendment. See, the Facebook and Twitter, they want to supersede the Constitution. We've said this here before.
Right.
Now, if you let that happen,
Right.
then we're in a really bad place.
Right. That's exactly right. And it is clear that if we look back at this election, Facebook, Twitter, big tech played a huge role in that election. They intervened massively, and I think illegally, because I don't think giant corporations can just intervene in elections in this fashion. First of all, in the way they covered the news, in all the news that they suppressed. They suppressed news that was unfavorable to Biden.
New York Post?
Exactly. And then you remember when they put out all of those warning labels to any tweets that in the run-up to the election that was expressing skepticism, legitimate skepticism about the security of mail-in voting. So every time Trump or anybody else would send out a tweet saying that, there really is just simply no security in this, in all this millions of absentee voting, there would immediately be a little label from Twitter attached saying this is disputed and by experts, and that was it. So they intervened, and of course, we also know about the $500 million that Zuckerberg pumped into the election in order to inundate Democrat-controlled areas with mailboxes in order to boost the Democrat vote. So this is what they did, and so when they there's nothing in those messages that they threw Trump off in which he's encouraging violence. He's saying, to the contrary, he's saying, I understand your pain. You need to go home now. I mean, how can anyone interpret that as in any way of violence?
What's her name in Georgia? Abrams, Stacey Abrams.
Yep.
Well, she thinks she's governor. She contested an election.
Right.
Exactly. She contested it. The outcome. She said that the election was stolen from her.
Right. Exactly.
There's no empirical evidence that is true.
That's right. And she still kind of gets all her MSNBC friends to refer to her as the governor of Georgia, the legitimate. I think Hillary Clinton refers to her as the legitimate governor of Georgia. So they don't expect that. Of course, we've said this many times over. The Democrats never accepted the 2016 election outcome and repeatedly insisted and indeed demanded innumerable official investigation of the 2016 election, and Russia's role in it had no role, whatever, and in constantly calling that into question. That's fine. Media are perfectly happy with all of that, but here, if you dare to call this anything untoward about the 2020 election, then you're somehow inciting violence. You're encouraging the dangerous lie, the big lie, as Liz Cheney, whom we talked about the other day, says. So so that's the media. Every time, boom! How dare you raise any questions about the 2020 election?
The problem that we're being challenged with right now is that what Facebook is doing, continues to do, and what Twitter has done, they have created an in-kind contribution. Exactly. Now that is going to get politically, legally very sticky. Okay, because there's no better example of meddling in an election. Right. That is the best example of meddling in an election. In-kind contribution.
That's right.
And there's no answer to this right now. Right. And I get really tired of saying it, but Republicans need to start doing something about this.
Yeah.
Because this is the game changer that will never be able. You'll never be able to undo this one. This bell's going to ring, and it's going to be unrung forever. I mean, if there isn't a clarion call get on this now. I can't think of anything else. I mean, this really is the ultimate test if you want to fight for it or not, or you're just going to bow and accept it.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And in fact, we've now had Justice Clarence Thomas has already given clear indications of where he thinks the law lies when he's now issued, recently two opinions in which he's suggesting that basically the big tech are like utilities, and they must be treated as utilities, which means that they're regulated by government, and therefore government sets out a certain criteria that they must follow. Utilities in the way that telephone companies are utilities. So telephone companies are not permitted to deny accounts to people, on any basis. They can't, and certainly not on political basis. So that's clearly that's what they are. They are utilities. They're exchanges of information. That's how the public today exchanges information, even through social media, and therefore they should be regulated. And therefore there's no more of this stuff of just simply these little kids deciding, oh, we don't like his politics, we're just going to throw them off of our platform. I mean that's
well, I mean, George, if this isn't adjudicated and soon, then there will be no adjudication in the future because they will be the adjudicators.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. This is an absolute opening for Republicans, and they're not doing it. And it is quite an extraordinary problem. I mean, as we've talked about before, the Democrats were in opposition from 2017 to 2019 when Trump had the White House. Republicans controlled both houses of Congress, and even so, the Democrats made the running. They made the running with their ridiculous, nonsensical Russiagate hoax, but they were the driving force. And the Republicans were nowhere. I mean, they were completely wrong-footed by all of these ridiculous accusations. Devin Nunes, who was supposedly the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, he managed to get himself thrown off again through a very deft Democrat maneuver. He wasn't even chairman for about half of that time. That's the way the Democrats play it. Republicans are just simply sitting there. I don't like sort of like complete like puddings, like stolidly unable to seize on this opportunity and show, yeah, this is completely unacceptable to have these giant platforms essentially deciding who gets to hear what. I mean, it's an absurdity.
Well, I mean, in-kind contribution, that's what it gets down to. The concept exists for a reason. It's been applied many, many times, and it has to be applied to big tech now. It's pure and simple. It's not hard to understand here because this is short-circuiting the democratic process. I mean, you cannot make a reasoned democratic choice if you're given limited information, and that information is intentionally limited to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that is an in-kind contribution, and this is the end game. It's the end game now. I mean, what was it? Lindsey Graham, because of the boycotts of Georgia, he's the senator from South Carolina. He went to one of the Republican Party confabs there, and he's giving $75,000 of his own money to help out the party there. I mean, how does that compare to what Zuckerberg can do in Georgia?
Right. That's right. Yeah, exactly. And of course, this is what they're doing now. I mean, this is where the giant corporations are now leaning on the number of states that are now pressing for, election security legislation. I mean, it was Georgia, now it's Texas, Florida. The number of states are pressing forward. The corporations are particularly big tech, are exerting enormous pressure on them. As if we like the way it was in 2020, where Zuckerberg can just simply whip out $500 million and steal an election. So this is completely outrageous. And you notice now what's going on in Arizona with this forensic audit of Maricopa County. Now the Department of Justice is stepping in, clearly threatening criminal action against the Arizona for what he's doing. The media, of course, is saying repeating Democratic Party talking points. The same media that dismissed all sorts of the election concerns about the November the 3rd, all the things. Hey, what about the ballot curing? What about these completely insecure drop boxes? Hey, what about the late voting? All the media dismissed it. Now suddenly the media are all wringing their hands. Well, there's no security in this audit. This audit is being handled by unprofessional people. I mean, they get to, you give these journalists their talking points and they just sort of read them out and just write it in.
The stakes couldn't be higher right now. I mean, and again, this Trump derangement syndrome is, your hatred of the big bad orange man is destroying the republic.
Right.
Okay, and it's going to be almost impossible to rebuild. I mean, if you really want to cut the country in half permanently, this is the way to do it.
Right.
This is the way to do it. I mean, for the life of me, I cannot comprehend why these people, particularly these people in the media, defer so much to people that are unelected, and do this out of their own business interest.
Right.
Okay, I mean, it's incomprehensible. I mean, just because of their intense hatred. Their intense hatred for a certain profile of a voter, it is so intense that they want to throw out the whole democratic process with it. Yeah. I mean, this is almost without words trying to understand the damage that is being done, and we're all watching this in slow motion.
Right. Yeah. No, exactly. And it's, but the point is, why are they doing it? They're doing it because they're all batting on the same team. So, I mean, when the media put out stories that later turn out to be bogus, I mean, how does that come about? It's not because they're sloppy in their reporting, or they make elementary errors. They don't do that. They know exactly what they're doing. They're putting out the message that powerful people want put out. Powerful people in this case want the message to go out that this forensic audit there's no justification for it, and that the people who are handling the forensic audit are terrible, unreliable characters, and the courts must step in and stop it. And if not, the courts don't do it, then the Department of Justice must step in. That's the story that the media are putting out, because that's who they are. They are the purveyors of the messages of certain powerful people.
But the pathetic situation that we're in right now, I don't really care at the end of the day what report comes out from there or who because you know what, George? People already have an opinion about how the electoral system works, right, and that the damage has been done. Yeah. And we had that opportunity here at the Gaugle. George and I pleaded day in and day out, start refuting all the claims. Right. We had a 3-month window. Systematically show people, give confidence. Right. And now we've passed that point. We've passed it, and people have an opinion one way or another. Right. Here, George and I have discussed this ad nauseum. We have drawn one very solid conclusion, maybe not too sexy for a lot of people, but our conclusion is there were a hell of a lot of ballots out there. And you know the implications of what happens when there's a lot flooding the zone. Okay, that's our position here. Okay, the in-kind contribution is not good. If that's not going to be challenged, right, then kiss it goodbye.
Oh, that's exactly right. And so we can firmly predict that when the 6 months are up and Facebook duly reports back to its oversight board, Facebook will, of course, insist Trump needs to be banned. but we'll come up with a whole set of regulations which will justify their banning all sorts of people forever and ever. And then the oversight board goes, yeah, good, well, you've done what we needed to do. Now go and ban all the people you need to ban.
Yeah, well, I mean, can Facebook afford losing 75 million subscribers? Yep, they can.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep,
exactly. I think so too. I think so too. But this was a kind of, almost like a good cop, bad cop routine.
Oh, Zuckerberg calls it his Supreme Court. Oh,
yes, exactly. Wow, boy.
My Supreme Court.
Yeah, boy, this oversight board, it's pretty tough. We really have to comply with their recommendations. You appoint these people, and they say, boy, they're tough. I mean, so what we're gonna do? We're gonna step up to the plate, and we're gonna report back within 6 months. So yeah, I mean, it looks like they're being reasonable. Well, I think you need to set up criteria to for banning people, and because you can't just do it in this peremptory, unregulated way. People need to know what standards are you applying, because this isn't acceptable. Oh, okay, well, we'll work on it now. We'll make it acceptable.
Yeah, and Mark Zuckerberg broke a sweat.
Yes.
First time in his life, he broke a sweat.
All right, Peter. We will, of course, maintain our laser-like focus on big tech, and this is our regular beat. Remember, we are now on locals, and our website is thegaggle.locals.com. So please look us up there. Please subscribe. Any amount that you can contribute is going to be very helpful for us. We're also on Rumble. Look us up on Rumble. And if you like The Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.